Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the WTF1 Podcast. Yes, it is that time again where you may well be looking at a 3-hour-long video. We don't know how long this is going to be, but it is certainly caused some talking points that we need to go through. And Tommy's already told me that he has some saucy takes for this podcast. So I'm very excited. And of course, we're talking about the Formula One Pirelli Gran Premio del Made in Italy, dell'Emilia Romagna, and what a race Grand Prix. Because Tommy put "and what a race" at the end of the script, so and I'm Ron Burgundy, so I just read it all. But of course, Imola, amazing. What an unbelievable Grand Prix we had. We had rain, which was very exciting indeed. Let's kick things off with some 3-word race reviews to moisten the taste buds. That's not you don't moisten taste buds, do you? Anyway, whet the appetite. At MJW77X, please keep Imola. Burner _ aka _ Brenner, send it Lando, Goebel _ Jacob, Hamilton got lucky, and Sean _ Gregoire, rain brings chaos. Well, please keep Imola. I don't know if you'd be saying that if it was just it was a dry race, but sure.
Yeah, quite a lot of that. People saying
race.
I love Imola now, and however much I'm a big fan of Imola, I was lauding it as one of my favorite tracks to drive. The racing, let's not pretend that race wasn't because of weather.
Because it was, wasn't it? It
pretty much, really. And I guess the fact that you can make mistakes and actually be punished for them big time.
Punished for mistakes? Because there's walls and not just a million miles worth of runoff? Surely not. Katie, of course, the WTF1 editor, you are actually the first 3-word race review, which I think because usually we do a couple of minutes of how are you? Yeah, you good? Well, you are. I feel like there's so much to talk about that we just go straight in. So let's get in with your 3-word race review, Katie, and let's fire away.
So my 3-word race review is what a mess. And that is referring to Valtteri Bottas and George Russell's collision around lap 31, 32. They came together in a big shunt, brought out the red flags, and then we saw probably a different side to George Russell that we've seen so far, getting out of his car and going over to confront Valtteri, and an exchange of certain fingers being shown and hits to racing helmets, which was massively entertaining for us fans, but could have possibly been a slight overreaction from George. But I suppose they've got adrenaline running through their body, haven't they? And they want to show how angry they are that they've both been taken out the race. But yeah, Toto Wolff manages them both. So that was probably a very interesting discussion after the race. And of course, it's likely that these two are going to be fighting for that Mercedes seat in 2022, which makes the whole scenario extra spicy. Thought I'd get that in there nice and early.
Oh, wow. Gosh, I thought we had Katie Fairman in the podcast, but we have Netflix here with us with all that hype that you've just dropped, Katie. So, yeah, that's a lot of...
They're going to have a field day.
They really are.
I mean, literally, tweet of the week from IBR was about Netflix saying that it was jackpot because of that crash. Because of course they will milk that. They will milk the fingers being shown. They love that sort of stuff, which is fine. We know what to expect with Drive to Survive, and we accept it for what it is. But yes, we're not pulling any punches. Everybody watching and listening, we're going straight in with the Bottas Russell incident, and let's just go in with a question. Megan Kirby _121. What's your opinion on the Russell Bottas incident? My opinion, and people love to hear my opinion, especially when people disagree with me. I thought it was more Russell than Bottas personally. I've watched it quite a few times, the replay, and yes, there's a lot of overspeed, and it's literal fractions of a second in terms of making decisions. But I felt like Bottas spooked Russell a little bit just by the fact that, look, it's not a dry track. Bottas is obviously trying to give space, but at the same time doesn't want to go on to the wet parts of the track because look what happened. George Russell ended up on top of Bottas pretty much. So I feel like Russell was quite eager in the sense of it's still a damp track. They're on dry tyres. There's going to be wet patches. I'm not saying it's completely Russell's fault because Bottas, I don't know. It's difficult. I don't feel like Bottas did much wrong. I know he speaks about this little jerk, this little movement, but it's not particularly noticeable from our point of view anyway. I don't know if it is for anyone else. But
he called him much worse than a little jerk.
Sorry?
He called him much worse than a little jerk.
It's just, that sounds really, really bad. But that's all it was really. And, you see these kind of defensive maneuvers, and it was nowhere near as bad as some that we've seen over the years. So I feel like Russell, he was a little bit eager to get past. Of course, maybe had in the back of his head, let me do another move round on Bottas. I've already got the Bahrain highlights saved to my computer not Bahrain, but Sakir, where he got past Bottas, and it was a massive power move. I feel like George Russell was, because he said after the race, didn't he, that Bottas would have defended differently if it had been any other driver. We would have defended differently, basically. I feel like George had more in his mind that this was a big power move than Bottas, in my opinion. So I feel like Russell, probably 70-30 in favour of Russell being at fault. Bottas could have maybe done a bit more in terms of spacing wise, but I don't think he could have done much more.
Yeah, I'd put more blame on Russell as well. It's a risky move. You need to make it stick, especially when you're racing. It's not even the fact that he's racing his rival. He's racing his boss's car. Do you know what I mean? Like, Toto Wolff is not going to be happy with that. It's a risky move. The nature of the track is, of course, a factor. Not seen too many people mention, but the straight at Imola is actually kinked to the left a little bit before they go. So naturally, Bottas, like, the gap maybe looked like it was closing a little bit, but I personally will go into George's actions afterwards later, but I don't understand this move that he's on about where, maybe at high speed, things are happening so quick and it's easy to watch a slow-mo replay and go, oh, look, there's a gap there. And I think he did just get spooked and maybe needed more room than he believed. But I personally didn't get his kind of calls that it was a Verstappen move. It wasn't, he called it the Verstappen move from 2015 that they stopped doing. I mean, that was nowhere near. And if anything, you actually see Bottas move to the left just before the incident happens, because he's kind of realizes that maybe he needs to give a little bit more room, even though he has given a car's width. But I feel like Bottas really doesn't want to have any contact. So the fact that George came out afterwards and said that Bottas has done it on purpose and stuff, or like raced him, they raced me so hard, not quite that, but do you know what I mean? That kind of thing. I don't think any blame is on Bottas, but it is the nature of the track that it's a risky move and it's hard to overtake, and it's just an unfortunate event where he dipped a wheel on the grass and plowed into the side of him. So more Russell in my mind.
Well, the important thing is that the FIA and the stewards deemed it a racing incident. So neither Bottas or Russell have been, given the sole blame, but I'm in agreement with you guys. I think it's more maybe 60-40 Russell's misjudgment there, but the track narrows and they're going so incredibly fast that any kind of little movement is probably going to cause some kind of issue when you're trying to overtake there. And like we said, Russell's tyre just got on the wet grass. I mean, if it was dry, then maybe things would have been slightly different, but as soon as he touched the wet, he just slid off and causes this huge accident. But yes, interesting scenario that happened, and I'm sure, like you said, Netflix are going to have a field day and it's going to be something that is brought up for the rest of the season.
And I think if it was dry, we've seen many times drivers running onto the grass to make an amazing move, like Monza, for example, where it was Alonso and
Vettel.
Vettel, it was those two fighting. Where dip a wheel on the grass, look awesome, but you cannot dip any sort of wheel on wet grass because there is no grip there. Surprisingly, when I'm saying 70-30, I'm saying it out loud, and I'm like, do I blame Bottas at all for that incident? Not really. It's more the fact that it's a racing incident, but Russell is more to blame. That's kind of where I'm saying.
You're saying that it's 70%, but you're not saying 30% of it was Bottas's fault, even though that kind of makes a very difficult way. It's hard to explain what you mean, because I don't feel like Bottas is any way at fault, but it is like a little bit more than 50-50. Well, a bit more than 50-50, because at the end of the day, George had to make that move stick, and he didn't.
He did not. And to be fair, I would love to have seen how they would have got through turn one anyway, because we saw how difficult it was for cars to go side by side through there in the wet. And also with the fact there's one dry line, I think it was destined for for some sort of impact anyway. So very interesting. Anyway, that was a big crash. Glad they're both okay. Perez Gasly comes in with a question. That's not Perez and Gasly, that's at Perez Gasly. But why do you think George was still angry in the post-race interviews when he'd crashed halfway through the race? Do you think there are some underlying issues behind the incident? Now, we get on to George Russell, I suppose, and his reaction was anything but professional, in my opinion. You know, you look at Sakir, the massive, disappointment. Of course, it was a different kind of disappointment because it was coming through the field and then, having a puncture and all that sort of stuff. This was obviously more of a high octane crash and someone's to blame. But the things he was coming out with, I felt were quite irrelevant in some ways. So, for example, saying that Bottas was in 9th and he should be fighting for wins and podiums in the Mercedes and nothing less. That was more of a dig at Bottas and his general performance in the Mercedes rather than the incident itself. So for me, it kind of spills over this disappointment within him that he's not in that Mercedes seat already. Because I feel like he obviously rates himself higher than Bottas. And it just, he was kind of coming out with all sorts of things, wasn't he? About, Bottas would have defended differently, and Bottas just came out and said, well, where's his tinfoil hat and all that stuff. So, there was a lot of emotion from George, and usually he's a very articulate, measured character. And it's something that, when he gets into these high octane, higher positions as well, maybe we start to see the immaturity that we see from other drivers as well. We've seen it from Verstappen and Ocon when they're pushing each other and crashing into each other and all that stuff. There is clearly that side to George Russell that we haven't seen before, mainly, in my opinion, because he's in a Williams and we don't see him in these positions too often.
Yeah, have you been reading my notes again? Because that was my take, that literally I was going to say that I don't think a lot of people especially a lot of George Russell fans, but I think, the way he conducted himself was pretty embarrassing, to be honest. Think for a member of the GPDA, that he's just, been made a director, for him to go to a big crash like that. And I get adrenaline's running high. There's been some awful things happen at Imola in the past, and it's a horrible crash. And for him to just, the first thing he thinks is to go slap Bottas on the helmet, when Bottas looked like pretty winded as well, and could have, anything could have happened.
Could have been hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Bottas was in there for ages. That's why I thought he went over to check if he was okay.
Yeah, but that wasn't the case. And then you think, okay, well, when he gets to the interview pen, maybe he's like, oh, okay, adrenaline's calmed down a bit. But I totally agree. My thought was that he's embarrassed that he's made not a massive error, but he's gone for this move. He's in the points again. He's absolutely sick of watching Bottas every week not be particularly great, and he feels like he's shown Mercedes, I should be in that car. And while I don't disagree with him, it doesn't need to be said. The fans and even Toto himself,
it's our job.
Yeah, the fans and even Toto himself can say, can make the conclusion that why Bottas is racing a Williams in the first place. George doesn't need to say that. It was like he was using that as a defense mechanism to be like, oh, well, not mentioning the crash. He's like, oh, well, Bottas is rubbish anyway, so doesn't really matter. And it was kind of a really weird take. And for him to publicly slate him like that, I mean, of all the drivers he could have crashed into, it's not a good look. And I'd go as far as saying that I know Toto Wolff made some jokes, whether you want to take it as serious. No, I mean, he's not going to the Renault Clio Cup. If you saw that joke that he made where he said that this week he was more of a Renault Clio Cup driver, or if you perform well, you'll get in a Mercedes. I personally think that not just the incident, but the way he's managed himself, every good thing he's done in Sakir has been completely unraveled and done. And I think that it really does make, I mean, if Hamilton retires tomorrow, are they really putting George Russell and Bottas in the same team? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's going to be now a thought in his head, or even Russell and Hamilton, where Russell was in the points. He could have waited for a better opportunity, or thought, I'm in the points here. Let's not be a hero and try and go around the outside of a Mercedes. I've not scored a point yet. And it's just, for me, I'm actually genuinely worried that Toto could really just not be impressed at all, and this could really damage his chances.
And ultimately, it was his fault.
Yeah, exactly.
The fact that he was adamant that it was Bottas, it
made it worse for him.
Lack of reflection.
It made it a lot worse for him, I think.
It was incredibly disappointing because we sat here last November, December, whenever it was, when George Russell had that terrible weekend in Sakir, and everything sort of fell away from, his grasp. And we said what a mature and like level-headed young man he was, and how that's the kind of attitude that he needs to have if he's going to be successful and, get that Mercedes seat. So for him to like undo all of that hard work in those matter of seconds, it was just really bizarre. And like, I hadn't even thought about the GDPA thing that you mentioned there, Tommy. He's meant to be a role model and taking on this position of authority and, a role model to all other drivers on the grid. And yet he's doing that. It is really disappointing. And I'm sure adrenaline plays a huge part in it. I mean, we've seen much worse drivers do much worse after a crash, hunting people down for a fist fight after the race or whatever. A smack on top of somebody's racing helmet probably seems fairly, tame compared to what we've seen in the past. But like you said, we didn't know Bottas's condition, how he was. And it just seems so not George Russell. We really haven't seen this side to him. And yes, that could be because he's been around in his Williams and he's not been getting these big chances to have overtakes on things like a Mercedes, because loads of people were talking about the fact that Bottas shouldn't even be in a position where he's getting overtaken by Williams. Like, it's that obviously is a part of it, but that's not a reason as to why this big accident happened. But it's just strange. I'm sure he's been taunted all weekend by the media, reminding him of this crash behind the safety car here last year. Maybe he felt like he had something to prove. But yeah, I'm a little interested to see this side to George that we haven't seen, and the psychology behind his decisions this weekend. Whether he'll try and sweep it under the rug and be like, oh, I was just really cross, or whether that something's been lit inside of him and he's now really determined to like just carry on with this I don't care mentality and think maybe that's going to be the way that I prove to Toto and the guys at Mercedes that I've got that fire within me that you need for me to be driving that Mercedes. But it was really out of character for those of us that have seen George in his F1 career so far. He seems like such a nice lad, wouldn't hurt a fly, all this kind of stuff. And then it's like, bam, that's gone.
It did seem like an explosion, didn't it? Of all the annoyance of everything that he's just gone through being in that Williams, that is just, he just got fed up of it and just literally it all just got too much and he just completely lost the plot.
Yeah, he's got a lot of pride within him. It's clear to see that. And he doesn't want to be embarrassed in certain situations. And I think maybe it's also a case of obviously seeing his friends around him, Leclerc getting a Ferrari drive, Lando, getting a podium in the McLaren. It's going to be difficult for him to see that. But
I mean, he's a GP2 champion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But at the same time, everybody's journey is different. And what he's clearly, or was at least, I'm sure he still can probably get back himself on the path of, getting to a top team. But maybe in, Formula One seats are there to be earned, especially the top seats. Just because Lando's in a certain seat and, Alex Albon got a Red Bull seat, whatever, doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have to work any or less hard. You know what I mean? Like, it almost feels as though these younger drivers may expect to get a top seat sooner than what we've seen over the years. Drivers take many, many years. And so, Sergio Perez, for example, has waited all this time, apart from obviously 1 year at McLaren where he ballsed it up. But he's waited however many years in Formula One to get a top seat. They don't just come like that just because you have a good couple of seasons. And I feel like that's almost a little bit of a reality check for George. And it's unfortunate for him, of course. He's in a Williams, but he's in Formula One. He's at the top flight. Okay, it might take a couple more years of proving himself, but it's incidents like that, in my opinion, that kind of shape his path. Because Toto could easily go, well, you know what, mate, that's not what I want. No, if you're going to continue like that, I'm sure he won't kick him off the program straight away. But if he continues to be like that and doesn't show himself as a team player, as the wider Mercedes family, then he's not going to get to that that pot of gold that he's hoping to.
I totally agree. I know it shouldn't be a case of he shouldn't be backing off racing a Mercedes for the sake of it when it's not in the team. He's trying to score best he can for Williams, but at the same time, it's not great. You've got to think, I'm sure we've all said it, don't know if you all agree, but in my head, there's absolutely, even though everyone on Twitter seems to think so, 0% chance if Hamilton stays that George Russell is being his teammate. I cannot see it happening. And this, for me, maybe if there was a 20% chance in my mind, this has made it 0. And I'm sure Toto is probably thinking the same. Like, they've finally, while Bottas' performance hasn't been great, he's been on a podcast recently and said, I nearly banned Hamilton and Rosberg for a race because it was absolutely appalling. And you've got to think from a marketing side. And it's couldn't have really gone any worse for him. Of all the people he could have crashed into and kind of lost a point again, I do feel sorry for him.
The guy can't catch a break in some ways, and I can understand the emotions spilling out. And this is an opportunity for him to learn and grow. And I'm sure Toto gave him an absolute destroying behind the scenes, in my opinion. May not.
Do you think he'll do an apology? And not like a YouTuber like
breaking my silence. No, I don't think so, because he came out on Twitter and said that he believes exactly what he said in the media as well. Like he's firm in what he thinks. I think he will. Do you reckon? Oh,
yeah,
if he does, I think it'd be better for him.
Yeah, I think
it shows he's learned.
Toto forces him to have like an awkward handshaking photo in the next
him and Bottas having a cup of coffee together. But yeah. It's not the end for George, by no means. We're not going to, completely hype this up as, George has ruined his chances at a Mercedes seat. Yeah. But he needs to show that he learns and improves. But
it's going to be the thumbnail.
Yeah.
No. I think as well, you've got to think of it as if you were in a normal job. This is probably just like a verbal warning, an equivalent of, it's not like a final, if you do one more thing, then you're out. I think it's just, Toto will understand, like he's been a racer before, that these things can happen as long as he learns from his mistakes and maybe keeps a bit more tight-lipped with the media afterwards and not cause such a headache for Toto and Mercedes and Williams. Then, like you said, there's no reason as to why he couldn't be in that Mercedes seat in a few years' time. But I agree with your point, Matt. I think quite a lot of people have seen, the guys that Russell was racing against, like Lando, like Charles, like Albon, straight away be elevated to these really good seats in F1. And George is probably a little bit miffed about that because he was the one when they were doing, I can't remember if they were GP2 or F2 then, but that level of championship, and George won it. Lando came third, I think, that year.
Second.
Lando second, Albon third, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then George has put in the slowest car of the three of them when they get to F1. So I'm sure there's probably a little bit of a grudge there, but hey, good things take time. So
they do indeed. And I think that's the key point from this, is that you don't earn it, as I say, after a couple of good seasons, even if some of the young drivers have proved that theory wrong. Moving on, let's finish the Russell bashing. Well, hopefully it wasn't Russell bashing, it's Russell learnings from the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. Another question before we move on completely. Levicious X comes in with, regardless of your opinions on the crash, do you think Bottas being stuck in ninth will have worried Mercedes? He never seems to be able to overtake anyone, as proven in Monza last year, but Lewis makes it look easy in the same car. Now, it's not particularly like for like, in my opinion, between Bottas and Hamilton and how they came through the field. We know that Mercedes is firstly on the back foot in general this year. It doesn't have the performance gap that it's had in previous years. And also Bottas was stuck there during the wet phase. And of course, when it was a bit drier, that's when the natural performance of the car is, is even more, and that's where you can really, as the wet is called the great leveler or whatever. So of course they're not equal, but they're a lot closer than during the dry sessions. So yeah, of course, Bottas not having DRS, for example, and it's Imola, it's a very difficult track to overtake. It's some excuses for Bottas, but at the same time, he shouldn't be stuck in ninth. So he should be making some progress rather than falling away from the likes of Lance Stroll and having George Russell over the back of him and overtaking him, obviously, when DRS was enabled. So it was a shocker from Bottas, to be honest. Of course, he had a shocking qualifying, didn't have the confidence in the car, losing 4 tenths in that first sector. Clearly, there was something in his head about that first sector that he just couldn't do in qualifying, because he matched Hamilton for the rest of the lap. So, but of course, if you start 8th in the race and then fall back to 10th at the start, you're going to have a very difficult race ahead of you. And yeah, it was a shocker from Bottas. I'm not going to judge it too much on the overtaking side of things, but his pace was nowhere. And Lewis, of course, did make it through the field eventually with the use of DRS, and generally is a better overtaker than Bottas. It's a given. Yeah,
I mean, Bottas's pace was not great, to say the least, but for me, his race was ruined in qualifying. Like you say, the track is really hard to overtake. The start, and you're totally right, it's not a fair comparison. Yes, we've seen it in the past, and we know for a fact that Hamilton is a better driver overtaker than Bottas. There's no denying that. But it's an unfair comparison in that race to say, oh, well, Bottas can get through the field, but it was wet. They didn't have DRS. We saw what happened to Hamilton when he went off the dry line, trying to go past someone, and that was lapping someone. So you could argue that Bottas may be playing it safe and knows in those kind of races when everyone's spinning off that he can just tootle around and end up getting 9th, 8th, 7th, whatever, bag the points, while maybe Perez is spinning off or Russell is crashing into him, which again maybe looks better on him. But yeah, while Bottas had an awful weekend and was pretty dreadful, it's not an entirely fair comparison. But I don't feel like they'd be worried anyway. He despite all the Bottas narrative of, oh, he's terrible, he had a decent race last time out in Bahrain. Obviously, he lost time through a pit stop and was solid. So in normal circumstances, if he's finishing 3rd or 4th, it's fine. Something we mentioned on the quali watch along that's going to be really interesting this year is to see what happens with Bottas and whether it is an Albon situation that 4/10 this year in that Mercedes is 1st to 8th, not 1st to 2nd. And that's really where Bottas is going to have to step up. That if he does have these races where he's 2/10, 3/10 off Hamilton in qualifying, it's no longer, oh, don't worry, you're only behind Max Verstappen or you're only behind Hamilton. No, you're qualifying 7th or 8th. So I think that's really where it's going to come down to.
Before I get into my Bottas opinion, I will say that Bottas obviously has moments of brilliance, hence why he's in that Mercedes car. Last year at Imola, he got pole position, and you could argue that he could have easily won this race had he not picked up the Ferrari debris. And then Hamilton obviously got that very conveniently timed virtual safety car period, or whenever it was, that helped him massively when he had to pit. However, this weekend, Bottas was just embarrassing. He had moments. I can see Matt's working down there.
Don't hold back.
Yeah, don't hold back. This is
he had really good moments in practice 1 and 2. I think he topped both sessions, and it looked like, it's going to be another Bottas walkthrough this year. But then the qualifying was absolutely shocking. And then when it comes to any sign of rain, Bottas just seems to choke. Like we saw exactly the same in Turkey last year. He had an abysmal race in Turkey, and the same sort of happened here in Imola. Yes, it's not fair to compare Lewis's overtaking in the second half of the race to Bottas's overtaking in the first half, because the weather conditions were completely different. But we've seen it in other races that Bottas says, oh, I can't overtake, the car's not designed for it. And then as soon as Hamilton has a chance to drop to the back and make his way through, he does it. So although Bottas, is a great driver, there's a reason he's at that seat in Mercedes, but Hamilton just proves that he has the minerals, as Matt would say, to just be an absolute legend when it comes to driving that Mercedes. There were lots of things that went his way yesterday. Obviously, him having this issue where he went off the track, as we said, a very rare mistake from Hamilton, and we'll talk about it later on the podcast. There were several elements that sort of benefited him into being able to get back to that P2 position. But yeah, for Bottas, this is just a really poor weekend, and I just hope that he doesn't get too affected by it, and he's able to come back stronger when we head to Portugal in a couple of weeks' time. But yeah, not good from him at all.
Not good. Right, moving on. Bottas and Russell done. And that's only 3 hours of the podcast that we've done. My 3-word race review now is Lando still rises. Of course, Hamilton likes his still I rise thing. So I just decided to combine some stuff and make it sound cool. Of course, that's talking about Lando Norris and generally his performance this weekend. Of course, a tiny error in qualifying stopped him from starting P3, where me and Tommy nearly fell off our chairs during our qualifying watch along. If you don't tune in for that, please do in the future when we do them, because they are brilliant. And if I do say so myself. And but yeah, it was a really good performance from Lando. It's really tricky conditions. He's still relatively new to Formula One, but he not only had a great performance, but completely and utterly slapped Danny Rick silly over this weekend. Of course, qualifying, he did start behind him because of a small, tiny error, and fair enough, you can mark that against Lando, but his race pace and his racecraft was phenomenal. And it's great to see this from Lando. You compare that to Australia in his debut, where he was scared to overtake Giovinazzi, and you just could tell he was very nervous. But, a couple of years later, and he's completely and utterly confident in the car. He's willing to go for moves like that move that he did down the straight, where it was almost just over a car's width at the inside of 3 wide with Gasly, and I think, was it Leclerc at the time? I can't remember, or maybe Sainz. But either or, it was almost 3 abreast going down the straight, and he was like, "Nah, I'm going to go up this very small part of the track where, of course, the wall kind of comes around." Anyway, Lando's performance was excellent in my opinion. And it was so close to getting P2. You kind of thought just maybe he was going to hold on. But as soon as I saw 7/10 around that final corner, you just knew that Hamilton was going to go flying by. But he had a great defense for most of it. And the interesting strategy with McLaren as well, going for the soft tires at the restart. Everyone else was pretty much on the mediums, but they made it work. He fired up the softs quickly. Charles Leclerc was sleeping at that restart. I was so excited to see Leclerc in P2, and Norris just goodbye going into turn 1. So yeah, it was a very awesome performance from Lando in my opinion. Let's go into a question. R-Done0. Do you think McLaren are favouring Lando, or is it just taking Daniel longer to get used to the car? I don't think it's favouring as such. They paid a lot of money, I'm assuming, to get Daniel Ricciardo on board in that McLaren, and they want to go forward as a team, and there's not going to be a case of favouring. It's just more the fact that Lando is completely accustomed to the team. Danny Rick's been dotting around different teams, and it's you have to get used to the different power unit, the different brakes, and it's taking Danny Rick longer than I think a lot of people expected to get used to it. I thought Danny Rick was going to come firing and beat Lando, not comprehensively, but decently across the season, and it's not been the case.
Yeah, me too. At the end of the day, it's ultimately the right decision, and I'd go as saying that McLaren are one of those teams where they do seem to, this could be famous last words when they crash into each other, but really good authority over their drivers. And I feel like that's partly why they finished 3rd in the Constructors last year, because they do maximize their moments. You don't have these moments like, I think it was Renault last year, where Ocon was in Ricciardo's way and they faffed about with it for about 7 laps, and then he lost a couple of places, and they're quite forceful with it. That it'd be quite easy when they first did it. I was like, oh, this is bold, them telling Daniel Ricciardo he's just joined the team, and I'm sure Netflix will do an episode where it's like, oh, Daniel's joined the team and now he's making way for Lando Norris. Like,
he was smiley before, he's not smiling now.
But that is why McLaren maximize these results, and it proved right, because as soon as Lando got past, he was about, was it like 9 or 10 seconds in a few laps? It was unbelievable how much quicker he was. And ultimately, that's what allowed him to be in the position he was. And one thing that was actually interesting with Ricciardo is he had an interview with Sky afterwards, and they asked him they said, Carlos Sainz said moving teams was like driving in a different race series. And he agreed and said, I can't believe how different it is, even though it's the same rules and regulations going into a new car, like muscle memory and stuff. But that being said, I didn't expect Lando to quite, be so dominant, I guess, over Ricciardo at the moment. Whether that lasts the whole season, we'll wait and see. But he's made an unbelievable start to the year again.
I think quite a lot of us thought Ricciardo was going to be absolutely on it this weekend. Obviously, he took the podium at Imola last year. But no, Lando obviously just had the car set up beautifully. He was quicker all weekend. I don't think drama needs to be caused this early on about, McLaren favouring Lando. Like, we were only in our second race, and it was evident from the timing sheets that Lando was just quicker. And I'm sure Ricciardo is not going to want to, cause a big trouble at his brand new team by refusing team orders in his second race. So he was probably happy just to understand Lando was quicker and let him through. But I am so impressed with Lando this weekend. I think this could possibly have been his strongest race weekend I've seen from him in Formula One so far. And I think that it's going to be a huge, vocal point when we look back at Lando's career in however many years' time, and we'll be able to pinpoint this race and say, we saw a side to Lando that I don't think we've really seen before. Like, he seemed to just tick every box. He was super aggressive with his driving, but also respectful and just so quick. And I'm really thrilled that he was rewarded with that podium. Obviously, we would have all loved it to be P2, but Hamilton just aimed for breakfast and put him into P3. But yeah, really excellent job from Lando yesterday.
It was indeed. Aaron Talbot 4. I know it's early, but do you think Norris can fight for top 3 in the championship? He seems to be performing quite consistently, and his pace on Saturday looks quick, and this is obviously helped by poor performances from Sergio and Valtteri. Will it balance out? I don't think he'll be top 3. I think, over the course of a season, Mercedes, especially Valtteri, he will perform. Even if Bottas doesn't perform every single race weekend, he'll perform enough to have some race wins under his belt. And McLaren, they do look strong. But I don't think they'll be strong the entire season. There'll be peaks and troughs. So for me, I think he could easily challenge, it depends if because Sergio again showed some promise, especially in qualifying, even though Max did make that mistake, which cost him about 3/10. But still, that's 2-3 behind Max on pure pace, which is exactly what Red Bull will take. And if Red Bull are the quickest package over the course of the season, again, I think Sergio will probably outscore Lando. But Lando going for 5th in the championship, I think, is very feasible. We will have the likes of Leclerc against him, I think. Maybe Carlos Sainz, if he, sorts his little bit of pace lacking compared to Leclerc. But, it's to be expected at this early stage. There's a lot of evolution that's going to happen over the course of this season, I think. And it's one to watch. But Norris, if he keeps driving like this and we have crazy races, there's every opportunity that he could be in with the fight for a victory. If we have, like what just happened, Lando could have easily been fighting for the victory if Max had just spun a bit more before the safety car restart, which was just, that was another element of the race of the 100 other elements that happened. So yeah, I think top 3 is a little bit out of stretch in my opinion, if we're looking at it realistically.
Yeah, wasn't Lando P3 at the start of the title last year after
race 2 in 2020, he was also 3rd in the driver standings.
So yeah, it's one of those things where I'd be amazed, like you say, Bottas will, he performed fine in Bahrain, and Perez has shown already that he can not match Max. I mean, he had an absolutely shocking race, there's no denying it, but I mean, he outqualified Max, which is something I think a lot of us are surprised about. I think I even said that I think it would happen twice all year, and he's already done it once, so I'm feeling a little nervous about that now. But when the track dries, though, Lewis and Max, I'm sure their fastest laps were a second quicker than Lando's, maybe even more. I know he was on the softs, but I don't feel like McLaren are quite there for him to be able to match Mercedes and Red Bull. But 5th would be, if he finished 5th in the title, I think it would do him no harm at all. It would be an amazing performance.
I'm going to sound like an echo here, but yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you. I think that P5 position on the driver standings is going to be really interesting because, I mean, Ricciardo and Norris, I know we're only 2 races in, but I think that's going to be a really tasty battle between the 2 of them. And the Ferraris seem to just look really quick. I think we've kind of dismissed them a bit earlier on in the season, but from the first 2 races, they look like they're sort of having a comeback, which is great for fans to see. So maybe there is going to be a bit more of a battle for that P5 spot than we even realize, but it depends, like you say, how Bottas gets on and how Checo gets on. But I can't see P3 in the driver standings at the end of the year. As lovely as it would be to dream about that, but who knows?
At Vettel Apport, could Lando be lured into a Merc seat? He's so consistent, so much less error prone than the other wonder kids. Charles, George, for example, seems a perfect fit for Merc. Now, I'm going to just rein this Lando Norris hype train in just slightly. I feel like that is a Lando stan, even though that person has Vettel in their name. I'm sure he would be lured into it. Absolutely. If it was on the table, Lando would go. I don't think Merc would undercut George Russell at this point, considering George is in the Merc Junior program and Lando is not. He's with McLaren. Things would have to go wrong in terms of what Merc are planning. I highly doubt they're planning with Lando. I think Lando has his future set with McLaren, especially with the current positive trend that they've got going. They're consistently improving season by season. And I think it's very harsh to say that he's much less error prone than Charles Leclerc and George Russell. Like George has had one crash with Bottas, and apparently I know he spun under the safety car last year, and he does have these moments. But that's to be expected. Max Verstappen crashed many, many times back in 2015 when he joined 2015.
Yeah, and the year in 2017 when he joined first full year at Red Bull, I think it was seven out of 7 crashes in 7 races.
Yeah, exactly. So it's to be expected that Leclerc and Russell will have mistakes, and Norris will have mistakes too. He made a mistake in qualifying, didn't crash, but he still made a mistake. So let's calm it down a little bit. I think Lando, George, and Charles have all got great potential, and we're 2 races into the season. Let's not jump onto the Lando Norris hype train to Mercedes just yet.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely crazy, and I'm not jumping on the Lando Norris hype train to Mercedes. However, I don't think this is outrageous as maybe some people think, and it's difficult because it all depends. At the end of the day, it all depends like what Hamilton's doing. Maybe because I think if Hamilton stays, maybe Bottas stays, or it's a little bit different to wanting to put in someone really quick. But Lando is managed by Mercedes, I believe, his career and stuff. So I don't think it's absolutely 0% chance. You never know. And when I read this question, I was like, actually, I could almost see that happening in a weird way. It almost makes sense that he could go there. And I'm sure that George Russell and Lando would not be as pally if Lando takes his Mercedes.
Imagine that.
Oh my days! Imagine the interviews.
Yes,
then.
the Twitch quartet would not be all pally and friendly then. But I don't think it's absolutely outrageous to think that. I would be amazed if Lando didn't go to Mercedes at one point in his career. I can see it happening.
Okay, Tommy.
Ooh.
All right, clip that up just in case.
Yeah.
The thing is, we don't even know if Mercedes will be a seat that people want come 2022.
Exactly, and that's another thing that I was going to say. I mean, if you look at the standings now, and if Mercedes, like Hamilton retires tomorrow, who they're picking, you're probably going to look at Verstappen, Lando Norris, George, but there'll obviously be that little bit of doubt, as we mentioned, with George. And at the end of the day, like, if you'd have said Verstappen gets offered the seat this year at the start of the season, you'd have said yes, but now you go, well, the Red Bull's built around him and they've now got a really good car, so probably not. And if anything, the George Russell thing has just shown how much Formula One, unfortunately, and why it's so frustrating for George Russell, is it's all about timing. Red Bull is a perfect example. You've had Da Costa, who was absolutely incredible and he couldn't even get in a Toro Rosso. And then 3 years later, they're scrambling just to find anyone to get in a Toro Rosso seat because they've run out of junior drivers. So it's all about timing.
I'm so glad you put this question in, actually, because for part of my job, like, I spend so often thinking, where could this driver end up racing, with driver changes and stuff like that. And I'll be honest, I've never considered Lando at Mercedes. It's never been a thought that has passed through my mind. However, during the race yesterday, I thought, I wonder if Lando would ever go to Mercedes. And now it's in the podcast. So it's bizarre, but I mean, he's getting a ton of experience with that Mercedes power unit in the back of the McLaren and seems to be performing with it well. So I mean, I know we said about the Lando Norris hype train, it's still early days, and there is a queue of drivers who would absolutely bite Lando's hand off to get that seat. But I mean, if he keeps putting in performances like this, then there's no reason why, down the line, Mercedes won't consider him for that seat. But like you say, regulations could change next year and Mercedes could be the slowest on the grid. I think the chances of that happening are 0.001%.
You sound like Toto Wolff.
I know.
Doesn't he say that every year? Like, even Williams could win the world title this year and Mercedes could be the worst. Okay, Toto.
Okay.
Yeah,
you
Absolutely.
keep saying that, babe. But yeah, it's but I don't know. Maybe Lando could go there, but we'll have to wait and see what the future holds.
I love it. We're 2 races in and we're already talking about driver transfers, for God's sake.
Love it.
Just leave it out. Right, Tommy, 3-word race review.
Mine is Hamilton scrutiny annoying. And this is... what could
you possibly...
Yeah, what could I possibly be on about? I am sick to death of...
Oh my God, you're such a fanboy.
Yeah, I know. With all my Verstappen stuff. Although I do have a Mercedes chair, I guess. But yeah, sick to death of these rules that have been around for years and years and years, and then it only suddenly becomes a problem when it benefits Hamilton one time, and people just seem to forget about all the times that Hamilton gets shafted by the red light or does a practice start and gets a maybe quite over the top penalty for what it actually is. And these drivers always come to mind, like Leclerc driving without his seatbelts on, that literally nothing ever happened about that. And it just seems like everything now, we had it in the last race with track limits. And obviously we did a video on it. Hamilton abused the track limits because he was allowed to. And then the reaction after the race was this video of Hamilton going off, and everyone said, well, no, it needs to be in the white lines. And if you go a millimeter off, then your lap time should be deleted because Hamilton did it. And then it happens to Lando Norris in qualifying, and the narrative is, oh, well, these track limits are absolutely ridiculous. Like, it was 3 centimeters off and he would have been on pole. Like, do you know what I mean? And it just, and again, the kind of, there are 2 incidents, weren't there? Him reversing on the track and this whole getting your lap back. And it just seems that they're just such non-issues until it benefits Hamilton. And then suddenly it's like, oh, do we need to look into this? Do the rules need changing?
It's ridiculous, isn't it? I don't know if it's an anti-Hamilton agenda, or if it's just an anti-dominance agenda, or whatever it is.
I think it's an anti-dominance agenda, because the same did happen with Sebastian Vettel when he was dominating. It did seem that he was lucky every single race.
They hate winning. So of course, you had the reversing on track debacle at T Hognestad. Why didn't race control look into Lewis when he rejoined the track in reverse? Did look kind of sketchy. Now we're actually releasing a video which you'll be able to check out tomorrow about this, and also the red flag as well. But basically, he did it as safely as he possibly could, and he was there. Obviously, tried to find reverse, and he did it so slowly. And I said this to Tommy, I think, on an Instagram live we did yesterday, where 95%, if not more, of the drivers, I think, get impatient in that situation, beach it in the gravel, take out the wheel and get out. Like they're out the race. But Hamilton obviously took ages, probably, finding reverse in those cars is difficult anyway. But then the amount of time he took was obviously really, he took a huge amount of time just to make sure he wasn't beached, and he rolled the car out. Then he had the backwards momentum of using that reverse. And then, that was the way in which he got out of the gravel. If he then engaged first gear, he's going to lose that momentum and get beached in the gravel. So he gets back onto the track on the edge of Tosa and then engages first gear and drives away. Like, there's nothing else he could have possibly done in that situation. And there are examples where people don't decide to bring up, such as Daniel Ricciardo Baku 2019, apart from when he actually reversed into Kvyat, which was
that's what his penalty was for, not reversing.
The penalty, not for actually reversing anyway, because he had to reverse. He could have probably engaged first gear actually and spun round, but he decided to reverse out. And of course, Max Verstappen 2018 FP1 Monaco. You can tell we've written a script about it because I've got all these examples in my head. He reversed because he went down the escape road. You had Mika Hakkinen in 1999 for the Monaco Grand Prix, reversed because he went down an escape road. This has happened before, and I doubt that the torches were lit for these examples. I can guarantee the torches weren't lit for these examples. So for that side of things, it was kind of sketchy, but that was the only way Hamilton was getting out of that situation. He didn't reverse into a car. No one had to slow down for him. There was an onboard of Vettel where he still went round the corner absolutely fine. So for me, it's a non-issue, but it's an issue because Hamilton did it.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with as well. And there's going to be people going, "Oh, you're so Hamilton fanboy," that we're almost lauding him about him going off. That we're saying like, "Oh, he's so clever, isn't he, that he's done this?" But it's so true. He even like drove into the wall, so his wheels were on the tarmac bit. So when he spun them, it wouldn't be in the gravel. And like you say, he's reversing out because he knows if he goes forward, he's spinning, digging it in the gravel. It's wet. And that's something, obviously, he didn't do in 2007, but it shows now his experience and he's always thinking. And like you say, someone else is rushing because they're thinking, oh my God, the championship's over. I need to get back on the track immediately, and pressing the accelerator, spinning the wheels, and you're getting stuck. But with the reversing on track, what I will say is, and this just dismisses the point for me, if Hamilton does anything, if you weren't allowed to reverse, the second Hamilton engages reverse, Christian Horner is pressing a button, complaining about it and getting him a penalty. And if Red Bull aren't complaining when they're in a championship fight, it's fine. It shows that it's only fans. Like, do you not think Red Bull would have protested that immediately if it really was this issue that people seem to think it was?
It's so true. I feel kind of sad for people who can't appreciate like the level-headedness and the intelligence behind Hamilton's thinking and how he rectified his mistake, because like we've all said, we have seen drivers do the same and they get so impatient and so panicked thinking, oh my goodness, I've made this mistake, I'm gonna lose my track position, I could be out of the race, and they just end up beaching their cars. And we've seen it with Hamilton in the past where he's made a mistake and then beached in his McLaren or something like that. I mean, he beached it in the pit lane gravel in China 2007. Like we've seen it before. And Hamilton said I think in the red flag period, or maybe it was after the race, how he was so shocked about making that mistake. But it's you have to appreciate the fact that he was able to rectify it. And we can sit here and joke and say, oh, you guys are Lewis Hamilton fanboys and fangirls and stuff like that, but we're just F1 fans that can appreciate like that the guy knows what he's doing, he's sensible, he thinks things through, and that's what makes him a 7-time world champion. And the people that saying that the Bottas was like a Crashgate 2.0, that's a whole nother subject that I could just rant about for the rest of the podcast. I'm going to bring it in. But yeah, that's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm sick and tired of seeing people saying, oh, you British fan girls and boys, always, talking about Lewis Hamilton. I just want Hamilton to have some respect on his name. He's a 7-time world champion, potentially 8 times by the end of this year. Who knows? It's going to be a close title fight. And you just have to appreciate greatness when you see it. Like, I'm a Leclerc fanboy. I want Leclerc to do well. We know this. I've come out and said it. I'm not passionate. But, it's literally like people take appreciating something that's good as being biased, and that's a crazy thing. And not just this fandom, I'm sure in all sporting fandom, I'd
have loved Hamilton to beach in the gravel and Verstappen be leading the championship by 20 points.
Yeah, I know you would. But you're a Verstappen. You're a Verstappen fanboy. I'm a Leclerc passionate fanboy. And Katie, who are you a fan of?
Half the grid.
Okay, cool. So you're just a neutral. So that you don't have any bias really. So it's just really, I just love seeing those comments because they think that we're biased when it's not. We're actually just, we just appreciate what we see, and we can see past the potential bias of certain drivers that you like or don't like. I used to be a Schumi fanboy where I'd turn off the race when I was a kid, and if Schumi's out, I don't care anymore. But now, fortunately, it's so much more fun if you're a neutral. Anyway, the red flag lap back thing. I don't know why there was such confusion, especially in the Sky commentary about red flagging and the lap backing stuff. They were discussing it as if they didn't know the rules. Like, pretty sure it's just a reset, isn't it? Isn't this just a normal?
Yeah, and they do it behind the safety car anyway, because if you remember last year, they did it behind the safety car, and that's what caused the crazy thing where the marshals were on track and people were caning it around the circuit to get back. So, yeah.
Yes. Anyway, was that a red flag? Was it?
No, just safety car.
It was a safety
they
car.
They can unlap themselves, can't they?
Yeah. So this is obviously different because it was a red flag, and people were questioning. Oh, actually, let's do the question. Ticey_46. Do you think they need to look into red flags? Here we go. A restart from a red flag is not a true representation of a restart and positions from when it came out. Lapped cars can unlap, etc. Should stop the race and restart in the exact same order as when the red flag started. No. Again, the only reason this has happened is because Hamilton was a lap down after his crash. And then they're like, wait, Hamilton just got a whole lap back and he's finished P2. Look, red flags are there because they stop the race, right? They, it's because there's a big incident or weather's horrendous or whatever. And the fact is, the red flags every single time will reset the race. That's it. Rather than having back markers on the grid, because usually when a red flag's out, they would have a standing start. But my understanding is the reason they didn't have a standing start is because one half of the grid was wet and one half of the grid was dry. So therefore, it would just have been
really fair. Okay,
not fair at all. That was my understanding. So obviously, they do it behind the safety car, and having back markers within the field is just not safe. That the fact that these drivers want to gain as many positions as they possibly can. If they've got blooming Mazepin and Schumacher as starting third and fourth on the grid, even though they're 15 laps down, it's just going to ask for collisions again. It's going to ask for problems. So there's a reason for that, and there's also for the racing spectacle. If you have those back markers within the field, then it's going to ruin the fact that Verstappen's on pole, but then Leclerc's a few places back. So a full blank reset works, and sometimes it will benefit Hamilton, sometimes it won't. How about all the times where he's been leading races and it's been red flagged? No one talks about it then.
Well, the ultimate irony of the whole thing is that Hamilton's probably lost out the most of that rule of anyone, because he's always leading. He's led more laps than anyone else in the history of Formula One.
What was it?
Allows the pack to bunch back up. So if anything,
Mugello.
Yeah.
Was it Mugello where he was leading and then
yeah, exactly. But I mean, yeah, he's going to be the one that is affected by this most the other way, because he's the one leading all the time by, especially last year, 40 seconds in the lead, and they allow everyone to bunch back up, change tires, whatever. Alex Albon was on better tires than him. Where do you draw the line with this? Do we say, oh, well, technically at Monza, it's not really fair that Gasly, because that's not really fair, is it? Because he got lucky. So do the FIA stewards get on the phone and say, well, Pierre, you were P10, really? I know, like the red flags change things and the safety car and stuff, but can you just slot back into P10 because that's where you were meant to be?
Yeah, and everyone slowed down as well, because Hamilton, you've got a penalty, but you were leading by quite some time. So if you just toodle down a little bit, there you go. Then you can take your. It's just. I'm sure
everyone would love the safety car to have a safety car restart where Hamilton keeps his 20-second lead at the start. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you imagine that? It's like Gladiators at the end, where there's the two participants. This is showing my age now. Where they had the challenges, and then someone would have like a 12-second head start on the final challenge. It doesn't. It's just not the way to go.
Yeah,
it's not a crossover I expected on this podcast, Gladiators and F1, but
I'll bring it in.
You have. It's so silly. I can see why it seems unfair and confusing to new fans. I can, but like we've said, there is a backlog of history as to where red flags have benefited or not benefited certain drivers. And unfortunately, that's just the way the rule book is. Like, it's set in stone. And I'm sure that they've looked at the past at how they could implement something to make it more fair or whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, none of us want a red flag during a race, because like you said, it normally suggests that there's been a serious accident, serious crash, someone is hurt, or the weather has stopped a race from happening. Not only does it completely ruin the adrenaline and the excitement from a fan's perspective, because all of a sudden everything comes to a standstill, but also you've got to think of the drivers. They spend ages getting themselves mentally ready for a race, and then for it suddenly just to come to a stop, and then they've got to, spend 15, 20 minutes, however long it will take during that red flag period, to then psych themselves back up again and get back into the flow of things. It's just, an inconvenience, obviously, but making sure that the reason for the red flag is all settled and safe. And at the end of the day, like I said, if there's a red flag, if there's an incident or whatever, the most important thing is that the drivers or whatever are okay, and that's what takes priority. But from a driver's perspective, like we saw with the Grosjean accident in Bahrain last year, that was red flagged for a very good reason, but it took a lot out of the drivers mentally and was a huge challenge for them to get back into those cars and find the right mindset to go racing again. So it's a difficult one, but I can see why people have got criticisms of it, but I'm afraid it's not changing anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be far more criticisms, as Tommy says, if they all kept being a lap down or 2 laps down. Be like, oh, why don't you reset it? Because they don't fly a red flag lightly. They'll always go to a safety car or virtual safety car to try and sort the racing action. They don't want to stop the race. And can you imagine how confusing it is if all the a casual fan, which is what Formula One tries to appeal to, more than us hardcores here talking about Formula One, if they go, oh, so Mazepin's now in third, oh no, he's
weird,
2 laps down. Exactly. So you just go, okay, red flag, it's a complete reset. Oh, that's a shame.
And
it's
also,
a bit unfair, but that's just the way it works. That's the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, in the early 90s, even before I started watching F1, they had aggregate time before the red flag. So it would be, so it would be, say, if Verstappen's a lap ahead, they would start, they'd have another race, and then they'd work it out. So if Hamilton wanted to beat Verstappen on track, he'd have to be a lap ahead, and then they work it out. So the famous example is 94 Japan, where they red flagged the race. Schumacher was 5 seconds ahead of Damon Hill or something, for example. And then Damon Hill was leading the second half of the race, because it's not a reset. He had to win by 5 seconds to actually pass Schumacher, even though you're watching on track and he's miles ahead and he's going to win the race anyway. No one wants that. No one. You
want to see it, don't you? You want to see it on track.
You want to see them going wheel to wheel. Shouldn't be a time trial that just because it's fair. Like if you want it fair, then let's just do qualifying and just
spec cars for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Right, there you go. That's reversing and red flags done. Let's move on to another one. Safety car rules. How exciting. This one doesn't involve Hamilton, actually. At Julian31798207, I didn't know that when you go off track under safety car that you can't retake your position. But with this rule, why didn't Leclerc overtake Verstappen when he got off track under safety car? Well, you clearly don't play the F1 game, Julian, because that's what happens if you run off under a safety car, and you can overtake that person. Well, it's quite obvious, really, if you look at it from a what a safety car is and what they're allowed to do is not overtake. But if a car goes off, the whole grid can't just stop and just, you good, Perez? You coming on anytime? They have to go carry on. So that's the only form of overtaking you're allowed, is if a car bins it or stops. But if Perez bins it, that's his fault. It's not like it's everybody else's fault for overtaking him because he's gone off to Narnia. So now the fact he's rejoined, he can't then go, you know what, safety car or not, I'm having that fourth place back. Yeah. It's not retake this position within 15 seconds.
But they can do that on the formation lap, which I guess is where it was confusing when Charles.
But the formation lap is obviously there not for safety reasons. It's there for formation, right? So it's a warming up the tyres lap. It's not there because there's been an incident and marshals could be on track and all that sort of stuff. So there's the difference there. It's safety. So the fact that Perez just went, you know what, nah, fam, no, I'm taking that back.
Nah, fam.
It's just not right. I'm sure that's exactly what it said.
Classic Perez.
So then the question about Leclerc overtaking Verstappen, that could have been an opportunity for Charles there, to be honest, because Verstappen was off the track for a very brief second, but maybe there was just that kind of almost gentleman's agreement type, like respect sort of thing from Leclerc. Where he's gone, Verstappen's lost it a little bit, but then you're also getting into that grey area of how much has he lost it. Verstappen lost it. Has Leclerc just overtaken under the safety car and he's going to get a 10-second penalty? So I can understand why Leclerc didn't, because it was a very split-second thing. I'm sure Charles is not sitting there in his cockpit going, Max could lose it at any point. And especially when it was literally like the penultimate corner, wasn't it, pretty much? Or the last corner where he lost it. So, no, it's penultimate corner, I think. But yeah, either or. I can understand why Leclerc didn't do it. But maybe it was an opportunistic Schumacher on Alonso. That's throwing back, isn't it?
And then get disqualified. 2010 Monaco.
Where final lap of the race, Schumacher overtakes Alonso because of the safety car line, but he's not allowed to because it was the final lap. Anyway.
Yeah, I thought it was quite an interesting question, because I noticed that Lando, I didn't see this picked up much, but Lando in his interview afterwards said, I really wanted Leclerc should have gone for it. Where as soon as Verstappen spun, Leclerc, I was behind him going, go on, he's off. Like, go for it. And of course he would have been. But like you say, I watched the incident back and it is a very close one. Like you say, it's not Perez where he goes, ends up at Monza and comes back on track. It's the other one. Verstappen's almost still on the track almost. And then he dips a wheel on the grass to come back on. That would have been really, really interesting to see what they'd have done if Leclerc had just bolted and gone, screw this, like, I'm off.
Well, Horner definitely would have been on radio.
He might have got away with it.
Yeah, Horner would have. Karen would have been. Sorry, Horner would have been straight onto the stewards. Well, I think Leclerc, if he'd reacted quick enough, would have got away with that. But it would have been tight.
Yeah,
there is actually a reason Leclerc said as to why he didn't do it, and that is because he didn't have any team radio. And apparently Leclerc didn't even realise that it was a rolling restart, which is why he
that's why he was slow, was it?
Apparently.
Wow, that really screwed him then.
Yes. So they were after the red flag, I think he was able to communicate with the team, but they couldn't communicate back. There's a piece
Imagine if he'd stopped in P2 and Verstappen had just stopped.
What's happening? God. But yeah, I think the team had to communicate with him through boards.
Surely you would communicate that before you go out. Like, isn't that during the red flag period?
I guess they probably assumed that he would have radio and just thought, or tell him then. That's so odd though. Imagine if he had been
discussed, right? Yeah, it's like, Verstappen's going pretty quick to his grid box.
Yeah, he's gone past it. But it's a weird one. But I think that could have been, quite chancy, because that if Leclerc did overtake Verstappen, then Karen Horner, as we have now affectionately named him, would have been straight to the stewards, arguing that till the cows come home. But yeah, maybe Charles thought it wasn't worth the risk. So
we didn't know. So there you go. Okay. So that's that part done. Unless anyone else had any insight on safety car rules, we'll go straight to A, B, C, D, E, F1. Tommy, play the jingle.
Now it's time for A, B, C, D, E, F1.
Okay. So for the first time ever, A, B, C, D, E, F1 has fan voting, and you can do that yourself by going to WTF1.com after the race, and you can vote. So we won't have more of this, wow, my God, Matt, I can't believe you gave him a D. And then the fan votes give that same person a D. And then I'll go, well, shut up. So
1,000 people agree with this.
Yeah, exactly. So, right, we're going to dive straight into it. We're going to start with Hamilton. And I'm going to give him an A because I've seen people already going, I can't wait for them to give him an A. After he's pinned it in the wall and blah, 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 and then the red flag, blah, blah, blah. I'm still going to give him an A just purely from, because you're judging him on his performance. Yes, he was a little bit eager trying to get past the back markers, dipped wheels onto the wet patch of the track, lost it. But in that scenario, as I say, I think a lot of drivers would have lost their cool. He wouldn't have finished P2, don't get me wrong, if the red flag hadn't come out. I don't think, he was a lap down on Verstappen. But you have to do what's given to you, right? And then he got through Imola. It's a very difficult track to overtake. And he got all the way up to P2. And I don't know if Bottas would have done the same thing there. So for me, you're judging things like getting pole position as well, which, was unbelievable considering he shouldn't have got pole position. That was more down to Max's mistake, sure. But Hamilton's still managing to get his 99th pole. It's just is crazy. So he always seems to perform. Of course, he did have that mistake. That's why it's not an A-star. And I don't think he would have got an A-star anyway because he didn't win the race. But for me, I think A is fair. It's not a high A. It's an A.
I'm going for a B.
Disgusting.
And because I'm such a Hamilton hater and a Verstappen fanboy, as you've clearly seen from this podcast. And I think it was an amazing recovery drive. But the reason I can't give him an A is because I feel like he threw away a chance of a win. And I think he was so quick.
It was catching him so quickly, wasn't it?
So quickly. I think it would have been hard to overtake offline. Maybe when it got dry, it would have been really interesting to see him right up behind Verstappen and see how that would have gone on a track where Hamilton seemed a lot faster, but it's very hard to overtake. That could have been another Alonso Schumacher style finish to the race. But Yeah, I'm going B because I feel like he lost a win through the mistake.
Yeah, I actually had A written down, but I'm going to change it to B because, yeah, I know. So I am in agreement with what Tommy said. I mean, we saw Hamilton make a rare mistake. And also the start, obviously, Verstappen absolutely spanked both Checo and Hamilton. That was an incredible start. And Hamilton
and then they started the race.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to go with a B because there are other people I've graded A, and it's not fair to put them on the same.
I love how we're going into full explanation mode because we want to kill us about Hamilton's grading. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because you look at that one as well, and turn 2, which we didn't even speak about, Verstappen and Hamilton going side by side, Lewis trying to hang it round the outside, which would then be the inside for the chicane with Verstappen, and that in itself, maybe he did throw away the victory there as well because obviously he got damage on his front left end plate, I think it was. So, yeah, but then he kind of sent it. So I kind of liked the fact Lewis went for it rather than just backing out of it. And the pace he had with that front wing damage was ridiculous. So I'm going to stick with an A, and the fans went with an A. So jog on, if there are people that are saying that I'm a Hamilton fanboy. So yeah, interesting stuff. Okay. Bottas, it's just a solid F, isn't it? No, it is. It's definitely an F. I thought maybe that was a little bit too harsh.
Yeah, I thought the same. I put E thinking you can't blame him for the crash, but still woeful. But he was pretty woeful.
Okay, maybe an E.
E, I think, is fair.
I think E, actually. Yeah, okay. E for me. Tommy, you're an E. Katie?
I mean, I literally called him an embarrassment earlier, so I'm going to just stick with that and go F.
Okay, F. All right. And the fans went with F. So well done, Katie. And I love how that's a well done, like it's the correct answer.
Well done for being a sheep.
Yeah. Oh, wow. You just called fans sheep. Right. Verstappen. It's a solid A star, isn't it? Come on. Let's just get it out of the way.
Easy.
Yeah,
Ruthless.
Unbelievable drive.
That was the Max Verstappen that, last week when I said you should have just been a bit of a dick and let Hamilton drive on the dirty stuff and ruined his tires rather than Max being so polite. Definitely wasn't polite there, but obviously it was a fair.
Hamilton's doing exactly the same thing, isn't he? In that
100%. You like, round the outside of me, I'm just going to take my corner absolutely normally. Oh, sausage curbs, enjoy.
That could have ended so badly though, couldn't it? Like
it could have launched it. And,
they touched, didn't they? So
yeah, they touched Martin.
They touched. Okay, A star. Perez had a good qualifying. It's a D, maybe even an E, with the pace that he showed was shocking in the race. Like, he was nowhere. He was like Danny Rick's. What am I going to give Danny Rick? That's the question. Okay, no, we'll give him a D. I'm going to give Perez a D, just purely. I'm basing it on teammate comparison, and he was absolutely nowhere. So I think he's a bit harsh. Yeah. So,
I think
D for me.
I've gone D as well. It was a really poor race. Very strange that Sergio Perez, you think, is the kind of driver that maybe not as quick in qualifying and then is the one that somehow does really well in these crazy races, but it was the absolute opposite. And we can't always has to be mentioned, but Alex Albon, it did feel like that kind of race where you thought, this is an absolutely bizarre race. He should be finishing third in a crazy race in a Red Bull, but he
spun off a couple of times as well. I know it's an E for me. It's an E. Yeah. I'm changing it because he went off under the safety car. I know it was very treacherous conditions, but he went off under the safety car. He spun at the second chicane, lost him fourth again, and he finished P12. That's an E.
No, yeah, I think you're right. I think if I'm thinking like what I'd have given Albon if he'd have had that race, I think would have been saying Diori as well. And if anything, Albon was a lot less experienced than someone like Perez. So
I was also watching it thinking if Perez was in an Aston Martin or Racing Point from last year, he probably would have done better than the Red Bull. Katie, what's yours?
I have given Checo an E as well, because although his qualifying was sublime, brilliant from him, we don't rank this to do with the rest of the weekend. We rank it on what happened in the race. And he just ruined a huge potential points haul. He had so many errors off the track, and then the silly mistake that he made with the overtaking and getting that 10-second penalty. And like you said, if we were ranking this as if it was Alex Albon we'd be giving exactly the same result. We can't just say, oh, it's Checo, it's the second race, blah, 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 blah. Like, he ruined a really good point. So his teammate won the race and Checo didn't even pick up any points. So mine is an E. Very bad weekend from him, which hurts my soul a little bit because I do like Checo.
Considering the amount of chaos as well, the amount of crashes.
Exactly.
I can't believe that we had like 16 or 17 classified, didn't we, at the end of that race? And the amount of crashes and spins were redonkulous.
I saw a tweet, I think it was Philip Horton that said it, that was something like, the leader spun a little bit, Hamilton was second, spent 50 seconds in the gravel, Lando didn't make a mistake, Charles Leclerc fourth, spun off on the safety car, and fifth, Sainz spun off
lost count
loads of times.
It's crazy, isn't
mad
it? Okay, next one. Norris, A-star, easy.
A-star.
Oh, actually,
Brilliant.
sorry, no, fans. Sorry. So Hamilton was an A from the fans. Bottas was an F. Verstappen, A-star. Perez was given a D by the fans. So
we gave him an E.
We gave him an E.
Okay.
So Lando Norris, A-star from all of us. I think that goes without saying. The fans
Easy.
also give an A-star. Daniel Ricciardo, I am going to give... It's a C, and it's like a low C in my opinion. He was just, comparing it to Lando Norris, of course, you take into account he's getting used to the new team, but there's no excuses really for how slow he was in those conditions compared to Lando. So C.
Yeah, I gone for C as well. Pace just way off his teammate, especially in the wet conditions.
Yeah, C as well. Slow compared to Norris, but still a good points haul, finishing in 6th. But
The fans gave him a B, which I think is far too generous, in my opinion.
a lot of Danny Rick fans.
If anything, I'd lean more towards a D than a B anyway with Danny Rick's performance there. But anyway, I gave him a C, so it's fine. Leclerc. Probably an A.
I can't decide between an A or an A-star now, because knowing about his team radio, I know people love because I saw someone on Twitter going like, oh, Sainz's drive was better because people, if you're starting last in a Mercedes and finishing third, people seem to enjoy it. Think it's a better drive than if you stick it on pole because you were great and win the race by miles because you're great. And Leclerc, I know it's boring that he started 4th and finished 4th, but he's just getting the most out of that car. I can't think that maybe even with the team radio, he gets a better start, holds Lando off, gets P3, which would have been phenomenal. It's hard to say anything he did wrong other than spinning behind the formation lap, but I guess of all the times to do it, maybe
that's the time.
So A. No, it's not as good. No, it's not as good as. It's not as. A.
Tell me how you doing.
I can't. No, actually, I can't rate him as highly as Norris or Verstappen. So I'm going A.
Yeah, A for me as well.
Perfect.
Fans gave him an A as well.
Thank you. Fans gave him an A.
We're not used to this yet, are we?
No.
I'm not used to saying what the fans got. So well done, fans. You got the same as us. Carlos Sainz, well, he had many escapades, and
how on earth has he finished 5th in that race?
That's one of life's biggest mysteries.
Crazy. Well, get on to Gasly soon. We haven't even mentioned him. I can't believe he finished in the same race, to be honest. I thought he was still in Bahrain with how much they left him out. Sainz, I think, deserves it's a B, isn't it? Because he finishes behind Leclerc. It was very close. He was good on pace at the end of that race. Without that red flag, but we can't really put in red flag as a massive factor in this because everybody got affected in some way. So you have to rate it on the actual performance. He did make a lot of mistakes. It's verging on a C in terms of his actual driving performance, but his pace was good at the second half after he spoke to the team engineer, and he was like, "Yeah, slow down, chill out, come on." So I think B's fair for Sainz.
Yeah, I've gone for B as well. Great recovery after not great recovery, but decent, solid drive. Which
great recovery when the race was reset.
The thing is, it's kind of, again, this is kind of why I gave Ricciardo a C and not a D. We'll go into AlphaTauri later, but again, huge points haul that they've missed out. And when it's so close in that midfield, the amount of points that Ferrari have got on the board and McLaren in a race where Ricciardo looked nowhere and Sainz looked like he was spinning off every lap, for them to finish 5th and 6th, that's like a really solid like, solid result. So I think it should be
Who finished
a
fifth
polite golf clap.
Fourth and fifth, mate.
No, I'm on about Sainz and Ricardo.
Sorry.
You'd say are quite like not great performances,
but
have got really good points. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I have gone for a B as well. I thought it was an excellent drive, and fair play to him for being able to stick in that P5. But I cannot overlook the amount of mistakes that he made, and what a lucky person he is. To,
oh wow, you were about to get us demonetized, weren't you? There,
I was. I had to be careful. A lucky person he is to retain that P5.
And the fans gave him a B as well. So there you go. Sebastian Vettel.
Why with Vettel does it always have to be like,
because I know I can hear the pitchforks being sharpened outside. It's just
a C.
woeful.
I put just a C.
Really? I'm going to give him a D.
I know he's maybe it is a D. I know he's had bad luck, but he's still messed up.
He's being outperformed by Lance Stroll.
Exactly, and he just doesn't seem to be there, does he?
I've gone a D as well. He was running in 14th-ish before his retirement, so
what a solid result.
Wow.
It's exactly what I thought was going to happen. Everyone went, oh, Matt, you're such a Vettel hater. He's going to come out the blocks in Bahrain. He's going to be a fresh-faced man. He's ready to take on the world. Can't even beat Lance Stroll.
It's only race 2, though, like we've been saying the whole podcast. So there's
Sorry,
still time.
Tommy, I know you're a fresh-faced man as well.
Yeah.
I was thinking more that was literally me saying, oh, it's going to be reborn. And...
Yeah, no, to be fair, that was you. So, screw you, Tommy. So yeah, I think Vettel a D at the very least, to be honest. It was very disappointing. And the fans, you went for a D as well, didn't you, Katie? The fans went for a D. So there you go. Even the fans, all the Seb Vettel fans out there. Lance Stroll, I didn't really see much of him, to be honest. It was a pretty solid drive. He finished in the points, didn't he? Was it P7 in the end?
P8. He got a post-race penalty, so he got demoted a place.
Oh, yeah, he got a penalty and so did Raikkonen, didn't he? So,
yeah.
So Lance Stroll, I think, I mean, you compare it to Vettel, it's a solid B performance, has to be said.
Yeah, I got for B as well. Almost an A, I think. It was quite an underrated driver. I don't think the Aston looks that great.
His engineer absolutely hates him.
What the hell is that?
Like you can hear the thorns in his
I've
words.
I've missed that. I didn't notice that.
He just sounds so impatient with Lance.
Oh, really?
You heard it in Silverstone as well last year.
I feel like some of it is Lance not knowing very basic things that you should know when using a Formula One car. But at the same time, he's just like, "Oh, come on, Lance! You need to press this button, or you just save your time." It just sounds so impatient. And then you've got like Mick
Schumacher's therapist.
Hey, baby,
it's all going to be okay.
It's okay.
All right, rock-a-pie, baby.
I saw so many people saying like, "How do I book in a therapy session with Schumacher's engineer?" That really made me chuckle.
Katie, what did you give Lance?
I gave him a B as well.
Okay, and so did the fans. So there you go. Gasly, let's talk about Gasly's race very quickly. Where they just left him on wets, which I felt was just the weirdest decision.
Yeah.
P5, it's looking like a crazy race. The weather forecast, at least on BBC Weather, said no more rain. Obviously, it's not quite as accurate as their weather predictions, but no other, apart from the two Hasses, which you just expected they'd go out on bloody dries, to be honest. But apart from them, they were the only ones that went on the wets. So apart from Ocon, and he pitted very early. So Gasly, you'd think Tsunoda would go out on the wets, but not Gasly in P5. He's got a great opportunity for a podium and could have easily been fighting Norris at the end of the race had he just gone with the same strategy. But instead, went on the wets. Don't know if that was his decision or the team's. And it was just a sitting duck.
I don't know.
Not a duck that could glide through water because there was none.
What are they doing with that? I'm sorry. Like you say, Tsunoda, it makes sense because he's messed up qualifying. He's starting last. Maybe I'm overthinking this and this is a bit of a stretch, but I don't know if they've got that Monza victory in their head all the time and they're thinking like, oh, let's do something different and somehow we can like turn it around again.
But as a midfield team.
Yeah, but you do that when you're 15th, 16th on the grid, not 5th. Gasly, how on earth he's finished 7th in that race? And they left him out so long that
he's still out there now.
He could have pitted because Ocon overtook him before he pitted, so Ocon got his whole pit stop back on him.
A dreadful Alpine as well.
What were they doing? And AlphaTauri should have been rapid here. And again, McLaren and Ferrari picking up those points when it looks like AlphaTauri are just as good as them is a really poor form. Awful
What are we going
strategy.
for then? Gasly, I'm going to give, the fact he still finished 7th was a miracle. And he did drive those wets pretty damn well at the start.
I want to give him an A because he didn't do anything wrong.
Well, you don't know that. You don't know if he's on the wets.
He decided, yeah, true.
But yeah, that's I feel like a B. I don't feel like it's an A performance. I mean, he did drive those wets really well at the start and managed to keep them in much better than Ocon, who just literally drove off and got the wets changed. His pace was good in the first sort of 10 laps, I think, but I think it's a B for me.
Yeah, okay, B.
Yeah, I've gone B as well.
Okay, perfect. And the fan rating was a B.
Woo.
Amazing. Tsunoda, he had a bit of a rough ride, didn't he, Tommy? Because you kept tweeting about him.
Oh, for God's sake. So in the quali watch along, I said, one little mistake here and you're going in the wall and ruining your suspension. And within a minute, Tsunoda goes back.
And you were talking about Tsunoda as well, weren't you?
I was talking about Tsunoda. And then during the race, I tweeted, wow, this is a crazy situation that Tsunoda is now managed to be behind Hamilton when he started 20th and first. And then 30 seconds, he was in the gravel from tweeting that. And I was so annoyed.
I have passed on the curse. You spent too much time with me, Tommy.
He went for I didn't actually notice this till I watched the race back because it was just carnage and I was obviously tweeting and stuff like that. He lunged on Hamilton into turn 1 and that's what caused him to spin. He got past Hamilton and then let up the tyres when he was coming around the corner. And it's one of those things where you're just like, you've started last, you've got very lucky to get back up here with all the craziness happened. Just calm down a little bit. I know that's not the Red Bull Junior way.
Not Yuki way.
It's not.
As long as you're fast, you can crash.
Yeah. Maybe that message from Franz Tost wasn't the best advice for Tsunoda. But
for me, grading wise, probably a D
because he's a rookie.
He had a horrendous qualifying as well. It's if that's someone else, that's an E. But because he's a rookie,
D.
Let him off. And the fans give him a D. Fernando Alonso. He got a point in the end, didn't he, somehow?
Yeah, he did.
After post-race penalties for Raikkonen. It was
I've never seen a less Alonso performance, especially in a wet race. He went off at the warm-up.
The
lap to the grid, he was off.
And then that amazing bit when the Bottas Russell crash and then the office zoom out turn to see Alonso.
That is the funniest piece of camera work I've ever seen in one race. I don't know why it tickled me so much, but it's just so funny the way it's like turns, zooms in on him, and then you can still see Russell and Bottas swearing at each other in the background, and the camera cuts back to Bottas and Russell and zooms in on them. I think no moment summarizes how insane that race was more than that.
So Alonso, are we giving him? Did he get?
I'm almost
a point. Is it a D? That's what I was thinking.
Really non-Alonso like.
D for Fernando for me.
I've gone for a C for Fernando.
Well, it doesn't matter, Katie, because there's 2 Ds here.
And the fans.
Technically, there is as well. To be I'm so terrible. Alonso fans gave a C.
Alonso fans gave him an A, but the WTF1 fans gave him a D.
Yeah, the WTF1 fans gave Alonso a C, so they're on your side, Katie. But it doesn't matter. We've given them.
They gave him a D. Alonso got a D.
It literally says C in this document.
Does it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Wait. I did it wrong.
Wait, just during.
I'm on the website. I'm on the website. Let me.
Okay. Well, whilst we do that, Ocon, Esteban Ocon. Well, he went on the wets as we mentioned. Had a dreadful strategy. Was pretty slow. I want to give him a D as well.
No, I've gone for C.
Where did he finish?
9th.
Okay, C.
He outperformed Alonso in that race, which was a surprise.
All right.
So I've also gone for a C as well for Ocon.
Didn't really see much of him, to be honest, because he was just a slow man for most of it, but somehow managed to get past Alonso, which is so crazy that I just don't know what happened to Ocon.
Alpine. I did it. Alpine.
Hello.
Sorry, is slightly concerned they're going to be another Alfa Romeo team where we go, oh, just give them both C's. I don't know what's happening.
So true.
Nowhere really.
But we gave Alonso a D and Ocon a C. The fans gave Ocon a C as well. Did Alonso get a C from the fans, Tommy?
He did.
Oh, so you're chatting rubbish. Good. Kimi Raikkonen. I don't remember seeing him.
He almost got a point, and then
he was in P9. He finished the checker flag at P9 and then got penalised for pit lane scrutiny stuff.
Which I heard was a bit weird, how he actually would have not been penalised if he'd taken back a certain safety car position or something. And
I could read you the steward's report, but it's like...
Oh. Katie at the second, she's like, I could read you the steward's report, but it's boring. And
but it's terrible.
It's literally bored out your internet there, Katie. It throws up. That's amazing. But yeah, don't bother with the steward's report, Katie. The internet does not like it.
No, thank God for that.
Yeah, Raikkonen, he had a strong race.
I can't think of a race more confusing, to be fair, for fans than that one, with the amount of penalties that were like, you can overtake under the safety car, you can't, you can, you're meant to, you're not meant to. Very bizarre. Right,
let's run through the rest of ABCDF1 because I fear this is going to be a 2-hour podcast.
Yeah,
I think that's true.
So Raikkonen, okay, I want to give him he finished in the points, then got a stupid penal. It's a B. It's a B for me for the fact that he finished in the points, but then got penalised.
Yeah, B.
Yeah,
B.
Katie. Okay, and it's B for the fans. Giovinazzi, C.
The world's most anonymous man gets another C from ABCDF1. Yeah.
I've gone B.
Oh, why, Katie?
Because he was pitted for a brake issue. And he was seeming to be pretty close to Kimi. So I think he probably could have got points finish had he not had to pit for that. And he did some decent overtaking. So I'm going a B.
Well, that's an amazing opinion. But it's not going in the...
Okay, well, that was nice. I was so energetic as well.
So Giovinazzi got a C from the fans and a C from us. George Russell.
E.
Trying to judge him on his race performance only.
E.
I want to give him a D.
Okay.
Well, I've gone for E because I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, but maybe should have settled for points in a Williams rather than going for a slightly risky move on Bottas. And...
I just feel like he was having a great race up until then, so I'm kind of giving him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt, just purely because it was a racing incident at the end of the day. It wasn't he wasn't penalised for it. So yeah, I want to give him a D, but that's fine. 2 E's from you guys?
Yeah.
Okay, so the fans gave him a D. Nicholas Latifi, I mean, it's got to be an E because, I mean, he had a good qualifying, but that doesn't matter because he binned it and then decided that a Haas was a ghost car. And I know it's treacherous.
Shocking.
You probably didn't see him, but still, check your mirrors.
Yeah, he said no to Mazepin, didn't he? And just came back on the track.
Oh, dear. Yeah.
Moving swiftly on to the man himself. Nikita Mazepin, and I'm sorry, no, the fans gave Latifi a D and Russell a D. I don't know if I said that. Nikita Mazepin, who finished the race. So I'm going to give him an E.
You're going to give him an E?
Yeah.
Who, Mazepin?
Yeah.
I gave him a D. I think he spun at the end, obviously.
He was half a minute behind Schumacher, wasn't he?
Was this front wing smashing up or not? Was this just at the end of the race?
This was
the end of the race because he spun at the end, which meant that he was really.
I think it's got to be an E. His performance throughout the entire weekend was horrendous.
Yeah, but we grade this on the race though.
No, we grade it.
We give a little bit of.
No, there's a little. No, come on, Katie, don't change the rules now. Just
but you're the one that changed it for me. You changed it for me.
No, we're saying that it's like a little dip into qualifying if you fancy it. If there's something that happened, you're all right. I'll take 10% out of qualifying if you fancy it. If it's like swaying between a high B and a low A, you know what I mean?
If Latifi gets pole and then breaks down on lap 1, we're giving him
he's not getting an F, is he? So I think Mazepin, you take into account he was slower than Schumacher throughout the entire weekend, probably just trying not to bin it, to be honest. So for me, it's an E. If we're going, it's an E plus, but we're not doing pluses and minuses. So for me, it's that.
Right, I've gone for a D.
Okay, Katie.
Well, my grade was based on the race, and I gave him a C, even though he had a spin, he was slow. Because for me, it was just just deafened all the headphone users. Because he managed to keep it out of trouble, keep it out of the wall, which is more than his teammate did. He was unlucky with the Latifi collecting him.
He definitely spun at Aqua Minerale, by the way.
Oh yeah. No, I know he did at least one spin, but at least he didn't damage his car.
Just to reset the counter.
Yeah. And he obviously had
I've not been on that website yet.
I haven't either, to be fair.
He had a lot of issues in practice and stuff, but we said we're not really including that too much. So I'll put it down to a D if we're going to look at more of the overview of the weekend.
All right, I'll move mine to a D as well. I can't base his crashes and free practice and spins and whatever. I guess that's where I'm kind of leaning on an E. But I think D is fair because he finished the race and we kind of judge it on the particular driver himself. I think anyone else we give them an E because they're half a minute off their teammate and whatever. But it's fine. D for Mazepin, and the fans gave him an F. I feel like that's going to be a running trend for this year.
Yeah, when he wins the race.
F. Schumacher, going to give him Mazepin's a D. I think Schumacher also gets a D just purely because he did hit the wall. He was faster than Mazepin, but I think he still deserves a D.
Yeah.
Yeah, same.
Yep. Okay, and the fans gave him a D. So there you go. Right, moving on. Predictions. What we had for the Formula One Pirelli Gran Premio del Made in Italy, the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. Only because you wrote it in the document that I read it, Tommy.
Standard.
Mine was Verstappen on pole by 0.3. That's half a point because he was definitely going to stick it on pole by 3/10 if he hadn't dipped his wheel in gravel. So it was on point.
Yeah, no points.
0 points for me. And Vettel out qualified by Stroll again. I think I'm going to go with that for every single prediction.
That's cheating.
And get 23 points.
Yeah,
but that one is definitely a point. So 1 point for me. Tommy.
AlphaTauri quickest of the midfield did not happen,
Nope.
and neither did Perez on the podium.
No, that was nowhere near. Katie.
Big yikes.
So I said that Checo out-qualifies Bottas, which was a bold prediction, but it worked. So I'd like an apology from you, Matt, for laughing at me when I said that prediction, please.
Yeah, sure. All right.
Sorry, could you speak up? I didn't quite hear you.
Breaking my silence.
Yeah. And then I said double points for Ferrari. So your girl got a 4 points haul.
Nice.
Okay, yeah, no, safe for the Ferrari one, but well done. All the same, Casey.
Oh, boo-hoo.
Next, I can't wait for your next predictions. There'll be just 20 cars on the grid. Fans. I'm kidding, Katie. Well done. Cordati, both alphas in the points like the last time we visited Imola. No. Nosy Bear 21. Sonoda on the podium. No. Lars Gers. Max dominates everything, but Lewis still wins. No. Unlucky fans. Predictions for Portimao. Oh, God, I haven't done mine. Tommy, it literally just says P. Tommy, do your predictions and I will put mine in.
Well, you've already got one sorted with your better
that was literally one.
God's sake. Hamilton dominant win and Leclerc top 3 in quali.
Ooh. I've gone for a Checo victory and another top 5 finish for Carlos Sainz.
Nice.
Interesting. Okay, and my two are Vettel out qualified by Stroll and Perez out in Q2.
Oh,
interesting.
Okay.
So there you go. So you've gone for a Perez victory, Katie.
I've gone big on go home. Yeah,
I've gone big.
That's very bold. I mean, you've cashed in 2 points now, Katie, which was very safe. So you may as well, try and save face. I feel you. Fans, F. Glenvick, Bottas wins due to Hamilton DNF. That'll be interesting. Ooh. Smith 50797538, both McLaren in top 5. And Quist 35, Ferrari will score the most constructor points of the weekend. That would be chaos.
That would
there you go. Some bold predictions. And apart from them both McLaren in top 5, I think that's pretty safe. But there you go. That is it. We're done. My God. Goodness me. We've been
7 hours later.
We've been filming for a long, long time. But a lot of people go, or some people go, oh my God, why can't it be a 30-minute podcast? And other people ask for a literal half-a-day podcast. So you've got it. Hope you enjoyed it. It's been amazing. Tommy, Katie, thank you so much. Do we have a sponsor, Tommy, or do I have to shout anyone out? No, absolutely nothing. Perfect. So we just say thank you to everybody for watching and listening. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time for Portimao. Very exciting. Hopefully we'll have another hour and 45 minutes or however long this podcast has been to talk about some more chaos. Tommy, final thoughts. You thought you got it? I was doing the outro and then I was like, oh no. Actually, no. Katie, final thoughts.
My final thought is I love Imola. I think although
it's you're like, as soon as I put you on the spot, you're like, generic thought. The clouds are in the sky.
But I know that the track has its flaws, lack of overtaking and stuff like that, but it's a track that really punishes the risks that people take, but is also extremely rewarding if you get it right. And I feel like sometimes there are not enough tracks on the F1 calendar that are like that. So I don't know if we're going to ever be coming back to Imola because obviously we're here because of COVID cancelling half of the calendar. So maybe this will be the last time we're at Imola for a while, which will be a shame, but that's my final thought.
Tommy.
I just realised that my I've put this sign out, which I borrowed from Imola in 2005 and are yet to give back. So one day I may return it, but
Imola
is
in
that-
pista.
yeah, I don't know what that means in Italian. I'm sure
So
someone.
hope it's not rude.
I hope it's not an
It's not
offensive.
rude.
Yeah, just an offensive thing you had there for the last.
It's the whole thing. The whole podcast demonetized. This thing.
Absolutely love it. Anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for watching and listening. Make sure to give us 5 stars if you're listening on an audio platform. Give us a thumbs up if you're on YouTube. Hashtag WTF1 Podcast if you want to get involved in the discussion next time. And that is it. Thank you to Tommy. Thank you to Katie. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time for Portimao. Bye-bye.
Can't
I was
wait.
trying to move
Yeah,
a
well.
bit of hair and it was really annoying. Right. Bye.
Bye.